Hi everyone. In a recent video I showed you how to create a ScanNCut cutting file from an Appliqué file using Brilliance Essentials. And this was the project that I made. You can go back and watch that on my YouTube channel. However, if you don't have any kind of software, you can do this directly on a ScanNCut machine, providing you've got a machine that can read PES or PHC stitch files. Now it has to be an Appliqué stitch file. You can't just create Appliqué from a regular embroidery file. So I'm going to start off by showing you how to do this very simple clover shape, but then I will go on and show you how to do it with an Appliqué that's got more than one fabric layer. So if you want to know how to do that, keep watching. I'm over at the ScanNCut machine now. The first thing I need to say is that your ScanNCut machine needs to be able to read PES or PHC stitch files. And here in the UK, the only machines I know for sure that can read those formats are my machine, the ScanNCut SDX 2200 Disney, the SDX 1200, and possibly the CM900. If you're in a different part of the world, you will need to have a look in your instruction manual or go to the brother.com website and search for your ScanNCut model, and then go into the specifications and look for the file import capability. So I've got the USB stick already in the ScanNCut machine. I'm going to go to retrieve data. I'm going to choose the USB stick and I'm going to look for my PES of this shamrock, and it's called Scribble Shamrock. So here's my file. Now, these two icons, the one on the right is the cut data and the one on the left is the stitch data. It tells me here that this is the Scribble Shamrock design for the 5x7 hoop and it's in the PES format. I'm going to click on the shield and it says that this pattern does not contain any cutting line data for Appliqué. So that, I believe, means that this wasn't created in Brother embroidery software. So I'm going to say OK. So to create the cut file, we've got to do it from the stitch file. So I'm going to hit this little flower. This tells me the size of the design, and I'm just going to make a note of that size for later. Okay, so I'm not doing anything to this file at all other than bringing it into my ScanNCut. This is how the designer has made it at this size. I'm going to say OK, and then you should see these three icons. There's a colour box here. If for any reason you see this, that's just literally all the different colour steps. It's easier to just only see these three options. The first option I think is line detection, so it selects everything. The second option is outline, and you would think that that would be the one that you would choose. However, if you choose that, that is going to create a file that's the outline of the total image that's shown here in this box. So that's, including all its various different stitch lines, and this is a scribble design, so some lines extend beyond, so we don't want that. This last option here looks like a zigzag stitch. This is the stitch file. That's the one that you want to choose. So you select it and say OK. And it's come in at the same size as it showed on the previous window. So I'm going to say set, and I'm just going to select it and just bring it nearer to the middle of the screen in the hope that you can see it. Now, as it stands, this is all the elements that make the stitch file. So if we go into edit and object edit, you'll see the group icon is grouped. So that's telling us straight away that we've got several objects. So I'm going to ungroup it, and now there's lots of different red boxes. So I'm just going to just click with my stylus anywhere on the page just to deselect all the boxes, and it will just select the top element. So I'm going to drag that out of the way and see what I get. Now I can clearly see this is all stitching. So I'm going to select the next one, and then this is more stitching, and then I'm going to select this one. This looks like an outline, and this one looks like an outline. Now I know from already pre-making this design that there's only obviously one applique element. If you're doing designs that have got more applique elements, it gets a little bit more complicated, but I will go on to that in a minute. So for a start, I know I don't need these two designs down here. So I'm just going to select one of them, say OK, click the 3 red boxes, and then choose the first icon, which lets me isolate an area. And I'm going to drag it down and isolate these 2 down here. And because I've got one of the items down here already selected, the machine knows when I say OK that I want it to pick up anywhere in this selection. So I'm going to say OK. That's now selected both of them. OK again, and send them to the trash and say OK, so they're gone. So now I'm just left with what looks like the 2 outlines. I'm going to go to Object Edit, and I'm going to come into the top icon, which is the size icon. And now you can see that this outline is 4.91 by 4.80. So it's smaller than what I started with when I brought it onto the mat. And that's because this is the first basting line, if you like. This is what forms the applique. The other size was including all those sewn outlines, and that's why I didn't choose the middle option of those first 3 options that came up when I went into that flower stitch section. So if I click this one now, this one should be the same, and it is. And basically how applique works, for anybody that doesn't know, your machine will stitch an outline and then it stops, and then normally you put your piece of fabric on top and then it stitches the same size outline, hence why we've got 2 designs here of the same size. Then you would normally take that out of your machine and you would get your scissors and you would trim as close as you can to the stitch line and remove all the excess fabric and then carry on. But doing it this way, this is going to get the ScanNCut to cut the applique piece for you before you even start stitching, so that when you get to this point, the machine will sew the basting line onto your stabilizer. You will then already have your piece of fabric pre-cut, and you'll just pop that on top and then carry on stitching. So we can get rid of one of these. So I'm going to say OK, OK, and send it to the bin. Now, if we cut this exactly as it is, this is the exact same size as the basting stitch. So there's no guarantee that when the design then goes forward through your sewing machine, that all your satin stitch or running stitch or whatever stitch is, within that stitch file. There's no saying that it will catch all this fabric. So we need to make it bigger. So we need to go to Object Edit, and normally we would go to Offset. If I select Offset, it will say to me, fail to create an offset line. Okay, so I'm going to say OK. So creating an applique cut file using a PES file that you've just got from the internet and put onto a USB stick, you can't use the offset icon. But what you can do is come into the adjustment icon. And this is why I said earlier that you need to make a note of the sizes. I was only pointing out the original size so that I could highlight that the size of the basting stitch is different. This is the one that's the most important. This is the basting stitch outline, and this is the one we want to work with. Now, when I use Embrilliance Essentials, I normally inflate my design by 1.5 millimetre in Embrilliance. 1.5 millimetres, if your machine is set to inches like mine, is approximately 0.06 of an inch. So I want to take this measurement up by 0.06. So that, to add 6 onto here, that means this needs to go up to 4.97. If you want to do it in millimetres, you can click on the wrench, change it to millimetres, say OK, and then you can adjust it here. I prefer to work in inches, so I'm going to stick with inches. So I'm going to take the height of my design up by 0.06 of an inch. So I'm going to hit the plus icon until I get to 4.97. And because I've got maintain aspect ratio not touched, it's taking the width up as well. So this original basting line was 4.91 by 4.80, and by taking it up 0.6, it's now gone to 4.97 by 4.85. I'm going to say OK, 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 and save it into the machine. Now, to save some time, I've actually already cut this, but just in paper, just to show you. So that's saved into the machine for now. So I'm just going to bring back in my piece of appliqué that I made in Embrilliance Essentials, and I'm going to bring in the cut file that I've just cut from copy paper using a 0.06 increase, and I'm going to lay this on top of the design, and you will see that it's perfect. And if you look, I'll try and zoom in. If you look here, when I set this over, and if you just look in at this section here, when I move this away, you'll see that this is called a scribble clover, and it's because of all these different kind of offset lines. You'll see that the stitches are, clearly go over all the fabric, so this would all be held in place. So that's doing it just on a very simple one-piece appliqué. So now I'm going to show you on another file that I got free off the internet that has a couple of pieces. So I'm just going to go back to the machine. So I'm going to hit the home button and say yes, it's okay to delete all the patterns because I don't need them. I'm going to go to retrieve data, back to the USB stick, and this time I'm going to look for this file here. This was a free file. I can't remember where I got this from. Oh, Sweet Pea, I think it is, SP, and it's called In the Hoop Puppy Purse. So I'm going to select it, and it's this first bit I need that's got the appliqué section. So again, now, if I click the cutting file shield, it tells me there's no data. So again, this file, although it is an appliqué, hasn't been made with an appliqué cut file within it. So I'm going to say OK, so we've got to use the stitch file again. So I'm going to select the stitch file. Now again, the size here, 6.17 by 6.18, is the overall size of what's shown on here. So I'm going to say OK. And again, you've got all the region section. This is showing you the outline, which is this stitch file around it. And then again, we want the stitch file. So I'm going to select the third option and say OK. Again, I'm not too bothered about the size at this particular moment because I know that the size is picking up this stitch box around it. I'm just going to say set, and I'm just going to bring it down a little bit just so it's away from the top corner. So I'm going to go into Edit, Object Edit, and again you can see it's all grouped. So I'm going to ungroup it, and then you'll see that there's lots of red boxes And that's because this design is made up of lots of elements. So I'm just going to click anywhere on the page to deselect all of them, and it will just always select one. So I can see that it's selecting this and I don't need it. So I'm going to say OK and send that to the bin. Then it's going to jump to the next element, and again it's another stitch line. And I'm just going to keep dragging all the sections that it's highlighting and get rid of the ones I don't need. This is where you need to have a bit of an understanding of how your Appliqué files work. And normally within an Appliqué file that you either get free off the internet or you buy, they don't always have them, but if you buy a file from a reputable digitizer, they will normally put a PDF instruction within the file somewhere that tells you, you know, the colours that they've assigned and what the elements mean. Now, I know from looking at this file previously, although I've not stitched this file out, that this here that's now selected is embroidery. It's not appliqué, so I'm going to send that to the bin. The nose is embroidery. I don't need that. I'm going to select the next section. This is all embroidery. I don't need that. And I'm just going to keep dragging them away and having a look at them. This is embroidery, so I don't need that. That's the same, that's embroidery, I don't need that. All this. I'm not so sure about that one, so I'm going to leave it for a minute. I've got another stitch box there that I don't need, and another one. This bit is embroidery, so I'm going to get rid of that. Then I'm going to drag this over and see what I've got. So I've got the outline, I've got another outline, and then I've got 2 pieces of collar. So this bit down here, I think is his mouth. So I'm going to just use the arrows until I get to that bit because it's tiny and I can't pick it up. And I'm going to send that to the rubbish. So we're now back to this. So working on the same principles as I showed you in the clover, these should be the same size and so should these. And effectively these should be the basting stitch that you would then put your fabric on. That would stitch over it, then you would cut round it. And these are like his collar, I think. So I'm going to go into Object Edit and into the size. This is 0.81 high. So I'm going to make a note of that by 2.02 wide. This is inches. I'm going to select the next one, if I can. And they're the same size, so I know I can get rid of one of those. So I'm going to say OK, OK, and send it to the bin so it's out of the way. And then I'm just going to do the same with these. So Object Edit, into the size. This is 4.79 by 4.70, and this one should be the same. This one's ever so slightly smaller. I don't know why. Usually they're the exact same size, but if you look at this, it's 4.79 by 4.70. This one is 4.79 by 4.68. So it's marginally smaller. So I'm just going to get rid of that one. So I'm going to say OK and delete. So I'm left now with the 2 elements that I would need to make a cut file for. So again, I'll start with the small one. We'll go to Object Edit. We'll go to Offset. It won't let us create an offset. So we'll say OK, and we'll go to the where we can resize it manually. So if I want to put 0.06 onto this design, which is roughly, as I say, the equivalent of 1.5 millimeters. That's just the preference I use. That's because what Embrilliance Essential uses by default. If you want to put more on, you add more on. If you only want a millimeter, instead of using 0.06, use 0.04. I'm just keeping mine consistent with what I used originally in the clover in Embrilliance. So I'm going to take the height up now to 0.87, and that will adjust the width accordingly. So that's inflated that area by the 0.06, and I'm going to do the same with this now. So again, this was 4.79. If I want to put 0.6 onto that, that now needs to go to 4.85. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 takes it to 4.85, and now I can say OK, 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 and now I can save, and I'll save them into the machine. So I've now created a ScanNCut cut file from the basting stitch of a PES Appliqué stitch file, and that's all been done directly on the machine. Now I just want to go back because that's saved now, so I'm going to hit the home button and say OK. I'm just going to go back to the USB, and let's just grab the clover. So when I said that when you bring a PES file up, you've got this shield that should contain cutting data. Of all the Appliqué files I've tried so far, none of them bring up cutting data when you click on this shield. And from what I've been researching, it seems to be because all of these designs have not been made within Brother software. But I'm going to show you in the next video how you can make the cutting files a little bit easier using this icon here, and that will be made using a cutting file that I create directly on my Brother V5 LE. So if you want to know how to do it a slightly different way, which does make it a little bit easier, then look out for the next video. So I hope you found that helpful. Please give the video a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe. I am trying to get to 50,000 subscribers, and YouTube are telling me that a large percentage of the people that watch my videos aren't subscribed. It doesn't cost you anything. You don't get mithered. It will just, if you hit the subscribe button, it will just help me get to my 50,000 target, hopefully by the end of this year, 2021. Okay, I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.